7 o'clock. So I'd like to welcome everybody. My name is Karen Martolio. I am the just a member of Greencastle League of Women Voters. I've been involved for a long time. It's a wonderful organization. I'm also the secretary for the state level. I'd like to ask all participants to please mute when you come on so that we can hear the speakers, or our main speaker. And just wanted to give a warm welcome to everybody who is able to join us. Thank you so much for taking time. I'd like to welcome and introduce our speaker of the evening. So LaToshia Everson. Tosh, I'm so happy that you got to speak tonight. I can hardly wait. She's going to talk about the Black Lives Movement, and this movement that defends humanity for Black people, supports leaders, and makes it so that everybody feels empowered, especially people of color. So LaToshia is LaToshia. I guess that is your official name. Tosh, who we know her as, is a lifelong resident of Greencastle, and her title tonight for the talk is Black Lives Matter, Today, Tomorrow, and Beyond. She is the Associate Director, of Financial Resources and Student Employment at DePauw, where she had gotten her degree. She's also on the executive board for the NAACP and also a member of the Greencastle League of Women Voters. So without further ado, Tosh, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Get off of there. Get off of there. Get off of there.
Oh,
all right. Sorry about that. They had to unmute me so that I could speak.
what's your name on
Thanks, Karen, so much for that introduction. As Karen said, I have been a Greencastle resident my entire life, and love living here and love giving back to the community. I do work for DePauw University. I've been there, what will be 7, 8 years, I think, in January. And my current role is in the Hubbard Center for Student Engagement, which is kind of a tripod office that does career services, internships, and off-campus study. And I work a little bit in all of those offices. And I tell you that because for the last 16 years I've been in higher education, I am an educator at heart. So in all of the things that I do, all of the organizations that I'm a part of, which seems to be growing every day, my thing is education. It's educating people to new information, to get rid of dis and misinformation, which is such a problem in our world today, where we have social media and things that we can get in an instant, yet we've not been taught how to actually look up sources and validate the information. So I am an educator at heart, and one of my main roles is that I send students away. We get most of our students at DePauw from our contiguous states, and a lot of them have not ever been anywhere further than where they are now. And so my job in off-campus study is that I help students to realize the affordability, the resources, so that they can go study abroad and learn about new and interesting places and see how other people live. And it's a really beautiful thing. I love when they come back. We do these kind of gatherings where it's called like a welcome home or a reintroduction to their home, because they've been gone for a semester or a year. And I love, Mark Twain was the one who said it, but that travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, narrow-mindedness, and many people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men, and I would say people, and things cannot be acquired by staying in one's little corner of the earth all one's life. It is very important to get out to see, to meet people who are different from you, to eradicate these kind of things. And so that leads me to what we're talking about today, which is Black Lives Matter, Today, Tomorrow, and Beyond. I'm going to give kind of a 3-point talk, which is about the organization and the movement, how they're married in many ways, where it came from, what it looks like, and maybe where it's going. So that's the Today, Tomorrow, and Beyond. As many of you know, the murder of George Floyd sparked in May 25th, many movements around our globe. Really, this organization and this movement, as I said, are a partnership. The organization began before the movement, but really they work kind of hand in hand. It is a movement for collective liberation. I like to say collective liberation because I think we can realize that when you help the least of these, everybody is helped, right? So when you go to the very marginalized, it really makes a liberation for everyone that much easier. It's a movement, a demonstration of direct action, which is showcasing injustices and calls for change. When we think about what we've seen with Black Lives Matter, you've seen marches, you've seen sit-ins, protests, petitions to call legislatures. It's really kind of very broad. The organization began in 2013. The acquittal of the murder of Trayvon Martin, as we all are well aware of, began really protest around the US, the UK, and Canada. And after we saw that, this organization led by three moms basically said, listen, we cannot stand for this anymore. And so what they decided was, we want to try to eradicate white supremacy, which is what they saw as allowing these things to continue to happen. Their mission really is to build local power to intervene in violence to Black communities. It's a political and a social movement, nonviolent at its core, and really looking at civil disobedience. They call themselves activists and liberators, and I love that. I love thinking of myself in that way, to not only be active in action in helping to eradicate injustices, but also to me that means you're liberating people. There's some type of freedom that comes with that. So I love that terminology. Their main goal, and so people hear all kinds of things about Black Lives Matter, the organization, and a lot of it, I always tell people, go to the website. You can literally look them up, and it's very transparent. It's very clear how they started, what their mission is, and how they do it. For example, so many of the Black Lives Matter protests that I've been a part of are extremely well thought out. They're extremely organized and well prepared. In fact, you will notice that if you've been a part of them and you're connected to them on social media, they will tell you when they begin and when they end, because they want you to know if any shenanigans are going on after the time that we've ended, this is not us. We have not sanctioned this. And everything that they send you in terms of communication is that this is nonviolent. This is our mission. Our mission is not to engage people who are trying to be antagonistic. Our mission is this, which is to bring voice to the voiceless. Really at the heart of what they're doing is to defund the police. And I know that people have this really hard time with that word. And, the movement, the organization, the liberation movements in general have gone back and forth of, do we say this? Is this something, a word that we use? And in my opinion, and this is just coming from me, Tosh, defund and then fill in the blank has been around forever. We've defunded education, we've defunded healthcare. So this isn't something new. But when we look at it in terms of police, then it's like this outrage of, oh, now they're saying there's going to be no police. We're not going to have anybody on the streets looking out for crimes. That's not true. What defund the police simply means is that you're divesting funds, which is usually an over and excess of budget, and reinvesting those funds into community, right? To more support. So you're looking at social services, you're looking at healthcare, you're looking at youth services, housing, these things that for people who may be committing crimes or on the police radar wouldn't necessarily be if they had these other things available to them, right? And so defund the police, in my opinion, isn't anything we should be outraged about, because it's a term that we very readily know and use. So to say that it's not is actually disinformation, right? And I like to always make sure people understand misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is just incorrect information. Disinformation is intentionally incorrect information, and you're spreading that intentionally, right? So defund the police is not something that, defunding is not anything that is new or should be scary to us. It's something that in government, that term is used a lot. And really, it is about making sure that the funding is going to the organizations, the places, the people that it needs to go to, so that people are really cared for and that the actual concerns and the actual issues that they have are taken care of. Isn't that what we all want? To me, it makes perfect sense. When we look at the real issues that we have in this country, especially to people of color and Black people, we're thinking about poverty, homelessness, mental disorder, things that are causing really them to be targeted in a way. And when we can move funding to help organizations that will combat those issues, we see a better place for all of us, right? And so this is, to me, a really good thing. And so the Black Lives Matter organization, that is its goal. It's ending over policing in Black communities, because what we see and what we know is that when that happens, tragedy occurs and people's lives are taken. Black Lives Matter, to me, that slogan, that mantra, that chant, is not ever saying that no one else matters or that we matter more. It's simply that right now we are being shown that disproportionately Black lives do not matter. And so we're saying, hey, yes, in fact, they do. Right. So I don't ever want people to be triggered or upset or enraged by that title, because it doesn't negate anyone else. It's only uplifting. I always say this, it's like, your house is on fire and the police or the fire department comes and they start hosing all the other houses in your neighborhood, and it's like, none of those houses are on fire. Why are you wasting the water there? My house is the one that's on fire. And so to me right now, this is the house that's on fire. This is the house that needs water. That's not to say that there's not injustices other places, because my goodness, there is. But it's to say right now in our country, this needs attention. And so that is the organization really as a whole. I encourage you, if you have any questions, as I said, the website is very transparent. It's very open. It tells you how they started, where they're going. It has videos. It's great. So if you have more detailed questions, I'm happy to try to answer those, but please go to the Black Lives Matter website and you'll find a lot of information there. So the movement, I always like to think about the movement and the organization really as a partnership or a marriage, because the movement came out of the organization. And so again, the movement is looking at collective liberation. So how do we help the least of these so that everybody else who's facing injustices is also helped? Because why? Because it's systemic change. So it's going to the roots of the things that are causing the problems and saying we have to correct these first, and then outshoots from that will then be corrected. It recognizes all of our struggles, and it understands that the connectedness of when we work together. It looks at fully humanizing everyone, because when you dehumanize, that is where you can do harm, right? If you don't see someone as human, it's how you can say they don't deserve this, and right, and so on, right? And so it's how we've seen slavery, it's how we've seen all of the things that we have, because when you dehumanize people, you can do them harm because you don't see them as human. So it's looking at how we fully work together. We look at within systems of oppression where everyone suffers, and we call to action, right? The movement in and of itself, as you've seen, calls to action to dismantle these systems. That's economic, political, social, right? All of these systems. So if you've been to a Black Lives Matter protest, you'll hear a lot of things about I can't breathe, or you'll hear people's names being said who've been murdered. You'll hear, lots of different things that are calling upon those injustices that are political, social, that if we can dismantle, legal injustices, healthcare, poverty, homelessness, all of these things, it uplifts everyone. So that's today, right? That's how we got here. When we think about tomorrow, I like to really think about it as an action. So for me, we see Black Lives Matter as the organization and the movement that are partnered, and it's a global expression. But we then see anti-racism, right? And so I know that the League of Women Voters did this really great series on anti-racism. There's lots of really good work out there for you. If you would like to read that, I would love for you to read it. That's really good. Ibram Kendi does an amazing job at for both adults and children on anti-racism. But in terms of our tomorrow, it's an action, and that to me is anti-racism work. It's educating yourself and it's practicing it. So I like to say it's not enough to just not be racist. You have to be anti-racist, which is something that's different. And so when we think about this, we think about anti-racism as identifying and eliminating systemic racism. So it's changing systems, organization structures, policy, practices, attitudes. It's going to the heart of the thing. I always say this, I don't care if you like or love me, but you can hurt me. And if you do hurt me, there's going to be consequences because you can't do that to anybody, right? So a lot of people say, well, it's a heart matter. And yes, it is. I mean, again, the Mark Twain quote, right? That travel is the cure for, I reduce it down to this, for all the isms. It helps you to see humanity in the way that we should be viewing it. But until we get there, I need policy. I need policy that says if you do this, then you have a consequence to that. So it's identifying those things. It's redistributing power so that it's shared equitably. And I want you to hear me in this, that I'm not saying so that we have it all. I'm saying so that it's shared equitably. Nothing within Black Lives Matter is saying, I matter more than you. It's saying we all matter. And so we need to redistribute the power and the funding to equitably show that we all matter. It's an active way of seeing and being in the world. Anti-racism is an active way of seeing and being in the world in order to transform it. So it's not just so that you can be anti-racist and that you have this knowledge. It's so that you can transform the world so that it's a better place for everybody to live. Practicing anti-racism looks like this. It's to be aware of how racism affects the lived experience. So my experience is different from your experience, right? And so it's allowing me to share my story, or somebody that you meet in Walmart who looks different from you to share their story, or for you to go out on your own and to look for stories that aren't like yours. It's recognizing how racism affects the lived experience, that my experience is different from yours. How racism is systemic and foundational, that it's built in, it's literally baked in to the very systems that are all around us. How could it not be, right? Because the people who put it in place had those thoughts, feelings, tendencies. So it's baked into everything that they've created. And until we recognize and change it, it's still there. How white people participate, often unknowingly, in racism. So that's a part of the anti-racism work. And that's not ever to say that, oh my goodness, white people are bad, they're awful, no, it actually has nothing to do with that. And we could talk about whiteness, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time because I do want to be able to answer questions as well. But it doesn't have anything to do with that, but it does have to do with knowing when that's happening. And it's the need to educate yourself, and to do that on your own, maybe not necessarily leaning on people of color or Black people to help educate you. Though lots of times people of color and Black people are very happy to do that. I love talking to people. I'm a people person, and I've been working at home since March 13th. So I am like, let me talk to all the people. I see people at the gas station. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? I've never met you before. Where are you from? Because I'm so desperate for socialization. But it's not our job to teach you. There are books, there's social, or not social media. Please don't look at social media for your knowledge. Please read books and articles. But there is something called Google where you can search, and you can search credible sources. There are lots of resources where you can educate yourself about racism and about anti-racism, about all of the things that are happening right now, social injustices, racial injustice, Black Lives Matter. You can educate yourself very easily in 2020 about these topics. It is more action and behavior than it is identity. Everybody wants to say, I'm anti-racist, but not do any of the back work to say that they actually are, right? To be actually anti-racist. So it's a behavior and an attitude and action more than it is an identity. And it's very easy to recognize, in my opinion. So when we think about beyond, so if that's our action, right, for tomorrow, that we've got to do this work, we've got to educate ourselves, we've got to be aware, then what does the beyond mean for Black Lives Matter? To me, the world, that this is a quote by James Baldwin, who I love. The world changes according to the way people see it. And if you can alter even by a millimeter the way people look at reality, then you can change the world. To me, that's our beyond. If we can help people to understand the reality, the actual reality of what's going on, not the siloed reality of their social media or of the news that they listen to, but the actual reality, which is why I say story matters. Because if I can share my story and you can hear it and you really hear it, then maybe that can help change your mind enough so that you see the actual reality in front of you. And when we do that, we can change the world and transform it into the place that it needs to be. So for me, we've got Black Lives Matter, the organization, the movement, the marriage of that. We then have anti-racism, which is the action and the work. And then we've got the transformation, which is our beyond. And boy, I try to be a positive, hopeful person. And I really think, just as those before me, that we can make a difference, that we can change the way that our world looks. So transformation, to me, really in the Black Lives Matter movement comes in the form of allyship. And when you think about allyship, it's more than just somebody who supports and like a, hey, I'm really sorry that this crap is happening. I hope it gets better. Or somebody who tweets about Black Lives Matter or about social and racial injustice. That is more performative allyship. It's called optic allyship, which is where you want to visibly appear like you're helping. But usually that fades after the trend of the hashtag of Black Lives Matter or the trend of, the social media hashtags disappear. Performative allyship disappears with it. And I have seen that over and over and over again. What I'm talking about is true allyship, which sticks around when things get hard, when it gets long, when things get tough. They just keep fighting for the marginalized. They use their voice for the voiceless. This isn't fast work. I hate that it's not, but it's not. And, I think about Coretta Scott King, who said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but that each generation has their own freedom fight, right? So I'm facing different things than Martin Luther King faced, but It's all liberation. It's not fast. It's slow and arduous. The arc is bent towards justice, but it's just bent. I'm ready to like take some type of like tool and like, you know, completely cut it off. But that's not how it works. And so true allyship hangs in there. It keeps going, it keeps fighting. It posts on social media, of course, but it does active things to actually move this movement forward. It's not just diversity in the workplace, it's representation. It's allowing Black people and people of color to be heard. And that looks like in the form of media, in the form of products. So diversity, you know, we've had a lot of diversity inclusion training as different injustices happen around the world. But and what's come out of that is that we need to have diversity. So we need to hire people of color and we need to hire Black people. But it's more than just that, even, right? It's pushing further to say representation in terms of media, products, all of that stuff matters. It's amplifying Black voices. So listening and learning. This is a time for white people to be purveyors of the information, to listen, to learn, to be active but not in control. And that's a good thing. It's beautiful to allow people who have been marginalized and who have not been given a voice to have the floor. To use your privilege to support. So if you are, if you do have privilege, and I always say this, everybody has some kind of privilege. I have privilege because I was educated. I went to college. So that's my privilege. Everybody has privilege. There are some privileges, however, that you have simply because of what you look like. You didn't earn it. It doesn't mean that you didn't work hard for everything you have in your life. It has nothing to do with that. There's no connection. It just means that there are challenges you don't face simply because of how you look. So if you have that privilege, using that privilege to support people of color, Black people in terms of businesses, projects, organizations, if you have resources that you can donate time, money, talent to help move the movement along. So for me, that is the beyond. It's looking at how our movement, how our action transforms where we live. So at a community level, but also at a global level. And that is really dismantling those systems so that they look more appropriate to what our world looks like now. This is a transformation. The movement is about transformation. It is a continued tradition of revolution. So it's something that's been happening for hundreds of years. And it's something that is very personal and important to me. And I really hope that as you hear stories and you just open your eyes, that it's something that becomes deeply important to you. Because in my opinion, we are all at this human level of experience. And skin color does not negate that we're all living in this human life. We all have challenges, we have struggles. And so the things that are affecting our world, and especially those us on the outside, should affect you, because you should never want to see your fellow human not being heard, not having justice, not having the same privileges, rights, equalities that you have. So this is a transformation. This movement is beautiful. If you've been to a Black Lives Matter protest, you know how beautiful it is, because you see the connectedness of humans, and you see that people of all shapes, sizes, colors coming together and saying, we are the human race and we do stand up for one another. And when we see something terrible happen, we say, we cannot stand for this. We will not stand for this. And it's really this beautiful expression. So if you've been to one, you know, because that's what it is. So this is a transformative movement here to say, we are equal. We will be heard. We will not stand for injustice. You saw people drive to the streets. I mean, this summer was an explosion of people saying, I'm not going to stand for this anymore. And so I invite you, as we go to our question and answer portion of the discussion, to learn, to be willing, to be vulnerable. This is stuff that's like self-work. So it's not like for the faint of heart. You got to be a little bit vulnerable. You got to be willing to see your dirt. Like that's what it is. We all have stuff. You got to be willing to see it and be willing to be taught, to learn, to change. I always say it's okay to be wrong, but you got to do something about it, right? And we don't dwell on how wrong we were. We just fix the problem. So I invite you, as we go to this, that there are so many resources, and I'm happy to share. I know with the last conversation I did in Crawfordsville that I just shared a list, and they posted that at the end of the recording of resources, but there's so much good stuff out there that can really help. So I invite you to continue to do the work. And I thank you all for being on the call. As a Greencastle native who's had my fair share of issues, I do love this town. And I try to, as much as I can, to give back, to seed in, to educate, to help be a voice of hope and of light and of love and of reason to my neighbors.
Thank you so much, Tosh.
Yeah.
That was great. It was just great. Having participated in the BLM rallies that we've had here in Greencastle, I mean, I think it's a quite moving experience. It's just great to see so many people come together for such a uplifting and inspirational gathering. So
Yes.
I think that those were just amazing. And, you know, it spoke to quite a different variety of people who attended those, right? It wasn't just, you know, I think stereotypical, right? I think a lot of people have a very stereotypical thought of who participates in those. And I really liked that there was, you know, wonderful different, you know, a myriad of ages and ethnicities and backgrounds. I thought it was just really inspirational. So just to throw that out there, I know you didn't talk specifically about here in Greencastle. I don't know if there was anything in the chat. Let me look. If there is, I might not have those right. So Leslie, I know you had some other questions or information that we might want to bring, or we can unmute the participants to see who might be able to contribute here. So let me see what I can do about this.